When you're working with long documents, there are a few things that you can do to help your workflow, to help you move a little bit quicker, and to make it so that you don't have to have your entire long document open all at once. Now, when we're talking about long documents, we're talking about books, documents with multiple chapters, maybe an entire magazine. I have open here our in-class article that we did, and that could be considered a long document, though it's not too bad. It's 23 pages long, and I've actually gone in and added some front matter. I think I've showed you this in a previous video where we have a title page, a copyright page, a little dedication page, place for contents, a preface, and things like that. As a side note, you can use this as a template if you want for your book projects, because you will be required to have front matter in those. And by front matter, I mean the title page, the copyright page, table of contents, a preface if you choose, all those kinds of things. So one of the things that comes up when you're working with a document that has front matter is you have a lot of pages that come before the actual start of your articles. So in this case, I have my first article here, and if I show you, it's on page number 9 right here. When we did our in-class article, we learned how to put in the automatic page numbering in your master page. So I have done that, and I have my A master page, you'll notice, applied to most of my, well, almost all of my pages. I have my start master page applied in just a couple of places. So I have all of my front matter counting toward my page count. In other words, if I were to just leave this as it was, I would have my first article start on page 9, and my second article, or I'm sorry, and my second page of the first article would start, if I show you here, on page 10. Now you might be thinking, well, why don't you just unapply all of this A master page to all of the pages before the start master page? I can do that. I can go ahead and shift click all of these, hold down the option key and press none, and that applies that none master page to all of my front matter pages. If I click on one of them, notice that I don't have any page numbers down here, and we think, oh, okay, well that's good. None of these are paginated, or none of them have page numbers on them. But if I come down to my start page, where my articles actually start, and I scroll down a little bit, I still have my article starting on 9, the second page of it is 10, and the third page is at 11. And I know this kind of shrinks when you're watching it on YouTube, so you can see right there that it's still page 11. To make it so that our page 1 is actually this page, or the page where our articles actually start, we want to do something with our document section numbering options. So let me demonstrate that for you. What I'm going to do is, in my Pages panel, I'm going to come over to my flyout menu, and I'll come into Numbering and Section Options. Now what I want to do is start my page numbering at 1, and I want to change the style for these first pages. In other words, I don't want to have just Arabic numerals. I want to change it to something else, and I usually prefer these lowercase Roman numerals just because that's what I see most often. You know, when you're flipping through a book and there's some front matter, if there are page numbers, a lot of times there'll be these lowercase Roman numerals. So I'll select that, hit OK, and now look what happens. All of my page numbers on my Pages panel are Roman numerals. If I come into my actual document, I can see that my page numbering has been changed. Instead of an Arabic 11, it's now a Roman numeral XI. So that's the first step. We're obviously not finished there. The next thing I want to do is to double click on the page that I actually want my pages or my numbering to start at. So in this case, I'm going to double click on page 9. It's the first page of my first article in this particular document. And then I'll go back to section and numbering options, or numbering and section options. I want to select again start page numbering at 1, so this is going to make this page 9 start at 1, and I'm going to change the style back to my regular Arabic numerals. If I hit OK, now you can see that I have in my Pages panel these Roman numerals here for my first 8 pages, or my front matter pages, and then I have this little triangle now above page 9. That means that I have a new section starting on page 9, and I've identified a different style of numbering there. So if I look at my document now, scroll down here, and now I have my page numbering how I want it. So this is now page 2 and page 3 and so on. So that's something that you may want to do for your book. It's annoying when you're reading a book and the author didn't do this or the designer didn't do this. It's definitely a good thing to do for your readers. Now the next thing I want to show you is how to move pages between documents. This is really simple. It's pretty intuitive, but it's something that you may want to know if you're working with multiple documents at a time. I'm going to go ahead and open up another document. When I have two documents open, and let's say I want to move a couple of pages of this first document over to the second document, I can just select the pages that I want to move, and I'll just do maybe pages 3 to 7. Come up to the flyout menu in the Pages panel and select Move Pages. Now the key here is when I have more than one document open, the other documents I have open will show in this drop-down menu. So because I have this document called 1 Lauret Smith open, it gives me that option. I can move these pages to that document, and I can choose to delete them from the current document if I want after they're done, or I can let them stay if I'm just kind of copying them over. Also, I can select where I want to move them in this Lauret Smith document. So 38 is the last page, so I'll just hit OK. And we do have different page sizes, so that's okay. It's just going to warn me there. And then if I come over to this Lauret Smith document, if I scroll down, I can see where the page size has changed, so that's something that may cause a printing problem. But just for the sake of demonstration, you can see now that I have these pages here. So it's very simple to move documents. And I will go ahead and close these, or delete these now, because we're going to be using this particular document here. Very simple to move pages between documents. Again, the key is to make sure that you have the documents open that you want to be moving to and from. Now, the last thing that I want to show you for this long document video is something called the InDesign book. Now, for this class, you may not find it very useful to use an InDesign book file. But if you, after this class, are going to be doing some kind of larger project, as I did, I kind of got thrown into the world of InDesign books after I took the class. I put together a family history for my granddad that ended up being almost 700 pages. If you're working with a 700-page document that has images and text, you really don't want to wait for your computer to open the entire thing, to render all your images, and then to scroll through 700 pages of text every time you want to work with something. So what you want to do, like I have here, you want to have separate InDesign files for separate parts of your book. Now these could be by chapter, by section, whatever book you're working on, it could be different. But you want to make sure that it makes sense to you, having these separate InDesign files for these separate parts. So I'll go ahead and open all of these up, just so you can kind of see what they look like. So they're all pretty similar. I have my front matter page here with a bunch of different things. I have a couple of chapters of these kind of family history, these personal stories, looking very similar. And then I have my back matter page where I have just a little essay there and then a colophon. So what I want to do is come up to the File menu and go to New, and instead of choosing Document, I'm going to select Book. Now this is kind of tricky in some ways, I guess. I'm going to save my book file, so I'll just call it Smith Family History, and I will save it to the same folder that I'm keeping all of my other files. In this case, it happens to be my folder on my desktop called Long Documents. So I'll save that, and what happens is I just have this little window, or this little panel that opens. This is my InDesign book. Kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't really look like a book, but what it does is it allows us to organize our separate files into a book. If I click on the little plus sign here, it will allow me to add a document, and I can go back to my long documents feature here, and I believe I can actually add multiple documents at a time. So I just held down the command key and clicked all the documents that I wanted to add. You can see my Smith Family History INDB InDesign book file right there. I'll hit open, and now I've moved all of these files into my InDesign book. What's really great about this is it allows me to organize these files in the way that I want. So right now, obviously I don't want my back matter file to be the very first thing. In other words, I don't want it to be pages 1 through 4. I want my front matter to be pages 1 through 4. So all I need to do is just select the front matter and move it to the top. And because I used my dynamic page numbering, in other words, because I put in that special character that we talked about when we were doing our in-class article, to mark that current page number, InDesign will automatically repaginate all of the files that are associated with this particular InDesign book. So it's really very cool. Now we have this little icon here that's next to our back matter file that indicates that this is the style source. Now what that means is that all of the paragraph styles, the object styles, the character styles, etc., that are within this back matter file can be synced to all the other files. Now, you want to be careful when you're using this feature. You want to pick a file that you know will have a comprehensive suite, I guess, of paragraph styles, character styles, and object styles. If you do that, you can select that document as your style source, and I'll just select this number 1 because I believe it has all the styles that I want in it. You can come up to your flyout menu, and you can actually synchronize your selected documents. If I do that, it's going to make some changes, but that's okay. We'll just hit OK. And what's going to happen now is all of my documents will have the same paragraph styles, character styles, and object styles as this document that I've set as my source. So it's really, really great, but it does take it does take some planning. So let me move these files around so that they're in the right order. And it's really as easy as that. I have my front matter, my section 1, 2, 3, and then my back matter. Now, what I can also do is come back to my flyout menu and, well, first, I'm sorry, let me go ahead and select all of my files here. And when I'm ready to create my book or to, send this book off to the printer, I can pre-flight my book or I can package my book for print all from my my InDesign book file. Now pre-flighting, I don't believe we've talked about yet, but that's just basically a series of steps that you go through to ensure that your book is ready for the printer. It's taking into account things like making sure all your images are CMYK, making sure there's no overset text anywhere, that all your fonts are good, etc. You can also export your entire book to a PDF, so let's do that. I'll just call it Smith Family History, and I'm going to change my location here, and I'm going to put it back in the Long Documents folder where all the rest of my files are. And I'll hit export. Obviously, I would want to make sure that there was no overset text, if I were doing this for real. But you can see that it's actually exporting all of the different files or all of the different pages from all of these files and putting them into one PDF. So you can see kind of what that looks like in just a minute here. Should open Acrobat. There we go. So now if I just kind of scroll through here, I can see that I'm getting all of my different files, which is exactly what I want. So this is a really handy thing, again, when you're working with very long documents. I can save my InDesign book by just clicking the little disk icon there. And then if I close my files, let's say, and I'll just hit, I won't save the changes that I made here. When I close my files, what I want to make sure I do now, that I have them included in an InDesign book, is always open them from my InDesign book file. In other words, when I'm ready to go back and work on this particular project again, I want to find the project folder, and rather than opening the individual InDesign files and making changes to them, I want to open the InDesign book file first, and it's the one that ends in INDB again. So I'll open that. I have my files here, and then I want to open these files from my book. So if I wanted to make some changes to the file called 3 Orson Smith, I would just double click that, and then I could make my changes here. That will ensure that your files are always synchronized. If I were to open the Orson Smith file directly from my Finder window, I may run into some issues, and I would have to make sure when I came back into my book I would get a little alert symbol here that says, you know, your file isn't the same as it was in the book, and I would have to update it that way. So always best, once you're using an InDesign book, to remember what files you have in your InDesign book, which again is just this very simple little panel here, and then open and manage your files from your InDesign book. So that's just the basics. There's obviously a lot more that you can do with long documents, but I hope that that is helpful. If you have additional questions as you're working on your book, or if you need to know anything else for a project that you're doing down the road, please feel free to ask me, and I'll be happy to help.